Oh my word. On June 5th of this year, just like 16, 17 days ago, I got to tell you all about the fact that Xorg, the ubiquitous open source X11 server that has been dominating Linux and BSDs and a variety of Unix desktops for years now, had been officially forked into a project called XLibre. And there was a million reasons for the fork, but it essentially came down to this. The Xorg team had basically abandoned Xorg, right? The Xorg team they had stated flat out that they did not see a future for Xorg. They did not want people using Xorg. They felt like everyone should be over on Wayland. And at least one developer was like, well, if I still want to use it, maybe I'll just keep developing it. And it turns out that developer, that one guy, had been contributing tons of patches, and other people had as well. When you combine them all together, there was something like 3,000 code commits that the Xorg team was just saying, you know what, we're refusing to release a new version with all of these code commits because, quite frankly, we want Xorg to die. I'm paraphrasing here. So the Xorg got forked. XLibre was born on June 5th. And in the days and weeks that have followed, the roughly 2 weeks that have followed, it's been drama. It's been Red Hat was banning developers literally from redhat.com email accounts. They were banning developers that were working on the project and created the project. They were deleting repositories of the Xorg fork. It was craziness. It was utter insanity. There were hit pieces being written by people who claim to be tech journalists. It was nuts. It was friggin' nuts. And what really had been hanging over everyone since that time was, well, let's just wait and see what the darn thing looks like when this fork of Xorg finally ships. Because until it ships, until XLibre, we have a version we can actually install on a Linux distribution, it's all of us just kind of arguing about hypotheticals, right? Until we have a released version, it's hard for someone to make a case for or against a fork of a project because we can't say, well, the code is bad quality or it's too buggy. We haven't seen it yet. Now we have, as of, let me pull this up here, as of yesterday, June 21st, aligning with the summer solstice, they have released the XLibre X server version 25.0.0.0. And this is the biggest release of Xorg, an Xorg based project in many years, at least 4 years, probably more like a decade, because it actually has new features. I mean, Xorg has been not just in maintenance mode over the last several years, it's been on barely life support. I mean, critical fixes just haven't even been trickling in. They haven't been allowing things to get released unless they're absolutely forced to, the Xorg team, which is predominantly controlled by Red Hat. We can argue about the details of that later, but I wanted to read for you guys some of the details so that you guys know exactly what's happening here. In fact, I'm going to read you guys this whole little announcement here because it's kind of charming in a way. Releasing XLibre 25.0.0.0, fork of the Xorg X server. Today, it's summer solstice, the soul's highest point of the year. Great time for the initial release of XLibre X server, a fork of the Xorg X server, coming with a massive code cleanup and new features. Besides cleaning up a huge amount of technical debt, various fixes for non-Linux platforms, the most important changes, in my humble opinion, are, and again, this is all a quote from the project lead. Namespace extension, a novel approach for isolating clients from different security domains, containers, into separate X11 namespaces where they can't hurt each other for cases where X security from 1996 is not sufficient. That's actually a pretty big deal. It's one of the big complaints a lot of people have about Xorg and its existence is that it doesn't have a feature like this. Now it does. B, XNest ported to XCB, no more dependency on XLibre. Per ABI driver directories allows distros installing multiple ABIs at the same time for smoother upgrades. Lots of small fixes and cleanups, too many to list them all here, and several CVE fixes, so some common vulnerabilities that were fixed. This fork became necessary because it's the expressed wish of the current Xorg group's majority, IBM/Red Hat, to abandon the project, let it rot forever, and block any substantial contributions, let alone new features. The sudden banning and censorship of all my work on freedesktop.org by IBM/Red Hat employees right after the first news on a planned fork came out should have cleared all doubt about that. They seem to believe that nobody's supposed to fork any of their, in quotes, projects. That's why we're doing exactly that. For quite a year, I've put tremendous amount of work I've put a tremendous amount of work for backporting 100 of merge requests back for across 1,000 commits onto Xorg master, but finally it's not worth at all spending any more time with that. If nothing substantial getting merged ever, if Xorg wants to die, so be it, but XLibre will live on. What he's saying there is he keeps contributing to Xorg. He kept contributing for a long time with hundreds and hundreds of commits, 1,000+ commits here. And since they didn't want to actually keep their project alive that he was contributing to, he might as well fork it. That's what he's saying there. He continues, since this is the first major release of the X server since years, with about 3,000 commits in between, there might be some yet unnoticed bugs. So this 0.0.0.0 release is considered beta. Feel free to play around and give feedback. I'm especially inviting people from all distros and operating systems to check it out and let me know what you need in order to make it work smoothly. And all those having their own forks, extra modules, etc., let's come together and collaborate. The X development, whether X-Free86 or Xorg, quite always has been an elitist circle, not actually warmly welcoming any new contributors, he continues. Today, Xorg suffers from similar problems as X-Free86 did. It's in similar situation that's been the reasons for forking Xorg from X-Free86. What he's saying is, because X-Free86, for those of you who remember, was the old Xorg, and then it got forked into Xorg for a lot of the same reasons we're seeing here. XLibre is going to change that. This project is inclusive to anybody who's willing to make good contributions. It doesn't matter which country you're coming from, your political views, your race, your sex, your age, your food menu, whether you wear boots or heels, whether you're furry or fairy, Conan or McKay, comic character, a small furry creature from Alpha Centauri, or just a boring average person. Anybody's welcome who's interested in bringing X forward. The source repo is up at github.com/x11libre. Note, as usual, for major X server releases, ABI changed, so most drivers need recompilation. They need to be recompiled. The only one we cannot recompile is NVIDIA. We're taking special care for not breaking it as long as it's still needed. Since Xorg people are currently sneaking in subtle incompatibilities into module ABI between Xorg and XLibre, please make sure you're using our repos instead of Red Hat's ones. Our driver tags are all prefixed with XLibre-XF86. See the README file for more information. Finally, many thanks to the whole community that has been growing so massively in just a few days and giving so much support. And special thanks for all the great contributions, especially debugging and retaining compatibility with the proprietary NVIDIA drivers. He made a mention in there about Xorg developers sneaking in compatibility changes between Xorg and X11Libre or XLibre. And I've been doing some digging into that because I was alerted to this a day or so ago. And there does seem to be actually some truth to that. We're going to be talking more about that later in the week. I'm reaching out to some engineers to kind of look through the specific details. But it does look like there's some sabotage going on a little bit. I want to be very, very careful about how I present that information to everybody, so I'm going through it very, very carefully. It's not unreasonable to assume that that sort of thing is happening, considering the reaction from Red Hat and Xorg and Free Desktop and the like already. But just the same, I'm making sure I get second and third opinions on exactly what's happening here before I present that. We'll probably be talking about that more later in the week. Now, here's the thing. This is great news, right? This is good news for anyone who wants the X server to go forward. If you are just, man, I don't want to run Wayland, and you want to stick to X server, which really includes anyone who has accessibility needs. Like if you're visually impaired, right? If you have poor eyesight or you're blind or whatnot, Wayland sucks, right? It's just not, it's a deal breaker. It's fascinating to me that the people who promote allyship and accessibility are also the people saying we have to get rid of Xorg and X server in favor of Wayland, when Wayland provides an absolutely atrocious out-of-the-box experience for people who are visually impaired. And so what they're telling people is blind people don't matter. And it's fascinating to me that those are the same people that also tend to push diversity, equity, and inclusion in their projects. It's the same group of people. They don't actually care about accessibility or diversity or inclusion when it actually matters, like making sure people can actually use their computer. It's frustrating beyond words. But what really matters here is, can we get this new fork, XLibre, up and running on actually shipping Linux distros, right? Because when a project like this ships, it doesn't mean that it suddenly and spontaneously is in every Linux distribution across LAN and you get it. It basically means there's a snapshot. Here's the code, here's the make files, here's the project, here's everything you need to bundle it up and package it for whatever Linux distribution you have. Anyone who wants it, come and get it, chow's on, right? That's what the release means. So there was a very real possibility that it was going to be days, possibly even weeks, before we saw XLibre or X11 Libre, depending on where you're looking at it, up and running on Linux distributions. But in all reality, it took all of about 2 hours. Because a whole bunch of Linux distributions have been working on packaging this fork of Xorg since before it actually released. They've been working on the development branch to try and get all the packaging and kinks worked out. So what I'm going to present to you now is the first screenshot, the first published screenshot of XLibre running on OpenMandriva, and it's running a web browser there with the OpenMandriva website open. And if you look real closely, there's another tab for the Lunduke Journal up there. So whoever took that screenshot sure does have good taste. I did not take the screenshot. It was sent in from an XLibre user, and you can look at the fetch details there. But yes, it's starting to become available on multiple Linux distributions already. Before I talk about that some more, I want to bring up drama again, because it wouldn't be news that involved Red Hat or Xorg or Free Desktop or any of these organizations without them just finding a way to insert drama. They love inserting drama into things. So this is what happened. So the XLibre 25.0.0.0 release was announced yesterday. Immediately after the release, check this out. I got a screenshot here. The primary developer, the guy who started the fork and is kind of the project lead at this point, his name is Enrico. He got banned from Xorg development mailing list, Xorg-Devil, immediately. Someone unsubscribed him. So one of the moderators of Xorg and Free Desktop, which is the same organization generally controlled by Red Hat, more or less, with a little bit of input from a few other groups. But they decided, no, you're not allowed to be on our mailing list anymore. So they saw that the fork actually shipped. They saw that the fork of the project that they've been trying to kill and the people they've been trying to silence and censor into oblivion actually shipped. They're pissed about it, and they unsubscribed him from their mailing list. It's crazy. It's crazy. Just a couple of other random tidbits. I've been getting trickle in of news of various distributions and projects that are looking to support XLibre. The Stormux, which is an accessibility focused Raspberry Pi distribution, is going to be moving over to XLibre for future releases. And again, this is one of those areas where accessibility is actually playing a pretty big part of it. So Stormux is an accessible to the blind Raspberry Pi distribution based on Arch Linux ARM. And it doesn't make any sense to have a version of Linux focused on blind people and still use Wayland. It just doesn't make sense. It doesn't have the features. It's not as functional. It's super duper buggy in those ways. And it's just not a good experience from an accessibility standpoint. It's not ready. It might become ready at some point, but as of right now, it is not. And so Stormux is going to be, you know what? They're like, you know what? We need X server. We've got to have an X server. So we're going to focus on having an X server that actually has a future, because the Xorg team says we're going to kill it. Well, the XLibre team's coming in and saying, nah, we're keeping this going into the future. So the people at Stormux are like, oh, hallelujah. Thank heavens. We actually have a forward-looking solution for Linux users who are visually impaired. So I'll be keeping an eye on that when that actually comes out. And this is cool. XLibre is looking like it's probably going to be moving over to Ghost BSD by default as well. Ghost BSD, of course, is an OpenBSD based BSD distribution, which means XLibre is looking to move outside of the world of Linux. And of course, XLibre, like Xorg before it, supports a wide variety of operating systems, of Unixy operating systems, not just Linux. I mean, many of the fixes that had been stalled in Xorg, that have been waiting for a release, were actually around things like, I believe, OpenSolaris and a number of other Linux, of non-Linux operating systems that, well, they have support for Xorg as well. So it's not unusual, but it's nice to see this sort of support happening across the board. Where's that screenshot again? Bring up the screenshot. So congratulations to the XLibre team and everyone who's been excited about this. Now I want to caution a couple of people here, because it's very easy to get very excited about all this. First, you're probably going to have a hard time finding packages for XLibre or X11 Libre, depending on where you get it packaged, in a number of Linux distributions, especially in the coming days. It takes a little while. People are going to be testing it out. People are going to be kicking the tires. People are going to be working on packaging. And of course, because there's drama involved, because Red Hat, there's going to be a lot of people arguing about whether or not it should be packaged at all, and all sorts of craziness. So if you're using Ubuntu or whatnot, it might take a little longer. But if you're on OpenMandriva or Devuan or Arch, I believe it's already in the Arch user repositories, the AUR, you're going to be able to try this out a lot sooner. For those of you who are already trying it out, report bugs. The reality is, the developer calls this out as well, this is the very first release of a new fork of a project, which means that even if there's not a lot of changes to the project, invariably weird issues might creep in, right? Because this is a fork, you never know what could quite go wrong. The people involved have a fair bit of experience in what they're doing, it seems like, but just the same, these sorts of issues crop up. Also, since the Xorg team was sitting on thousands of merge requests. Thousands, over 3,000. There's a lot of stuff that's going in here. New features, security features, ABI changes, driver potential changes, lots of bug fixes, vulnerabilities that are getting fixed, stuff that just has been waiting in the wings for a long time. There's so many changes. It's the biggest release in a long time. Invariably, there's going to be some issues. There has to be, right? There has to be some issues with any release that's this significant. So report those issues. The team seems like they're pretty gung-ho on it, so hopefully they get any of those issues sorted out pretty quickly. That said, I am running it right now. I am literally running it right now on OpenMandriva. It works just fine. I have encountered no issues. None whatsoever. So I don't have any problems to point at. So, but then again, what I'm running here is a laptop with a single desktop, a single screen. So I'm not doing, multiple screens. I'm not having to configure any of that. I'm not using an NVIDIA driver. Like there could be a number of scenarios that could get a little wonky that I'm just not touching at this point. But so far, right out of the gate, it's exactly the same. It was going from Xorg to XLibre was like, did it change? I had to double check and verify. I'm like, yep, it changed because it's the same. It works. It's a drop-in replacement. So all is well so far. But again, I've only been running it for 7 hours now, so we'll see as time goes on. But once again, congratulations to the team. My condolences to Red Hat and Xorg and Free Desktop and everyone else who has just got their knickers all twisted up around this. I'm sorry that this project's living on. I know you wanted it to die because you wanted to kill a piece of open source software. I know that upsets you that open source can be forked. But my condolences to Red Hat. Thank you to the Lunduke Journal subscribers for allowing me to do this sort of coverage. I couldn't do this without you, and you are just fantastic. Go to lunduke.com and find all the links to where you can subscribe and where you can watch and do all that good. I should point something out. I added a little thing on here that wasn't there before, and you might have missed this. If you go to the lunduke.com and you scroll down, there's a little section that says how to support the Lunduke Journal. You can get a one-time donation, you can get a lifetime subscription. Those are all great. And then there's 4 options where you can get monthly or yearly subscriptions, basically ways that you can support the work that I do on a monthly or yearly basis. And up until yesterday, the options were Locals, Substack, or Patreon. Those were the places you could get a monthly subscription to the Lunduke Journal. You can now get a monthly subscription on X. and I don't know how many people want to use subscriptions on X, but X has a subscription service now. I don't have any intentions to fill up the X.com feed with nothing but nonstop, exclusive posts that only subscribers can see. I plan to keep it all exactly like I have it now, where all the shows I put out are available for free for everyone to be shared, because a lot of this news needs to get out there, because a lot of it isn't being covered by anyone else. But if you want to support the Lunduke Journal and you happen to like using X a lot, give it a shot. Just go to my X account. I think there's a little subscribe button. You can click on it. It's very fancy. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, nerds and nerdettes across this inner tube of ours, I do declare end broadcast.